There's nothing more that an entrepreneur, small business owner, or sales rep hates more than talking to someone who cannot buy. Now, that isn't to be confused with someone who's unable to buy or they are unable to close. That's a very different problem. But I'm talking about people who show up on your calendar, walk in your door, have a conversation with you, and they're actually unable to buy because they are not qualified. That is one of the biggest time sucks and time wastes for, again, business owner, entrepreneur, and or sales rep. And in this video, I'm going to show you one of my favorite automations of all time to make sure that you are only talking to people who are qualified to buy from you. So with that, yo, my name is Kajana. Lots of people call me Cage. I run a RevOps automation agency, which is basically just a fancy way of saying we build automations specifically in the area of generating traffic, getting high quality leads, making more sales, and getting people through onboarding. That's really what it falls down to. It's just a really fancy way of saying that. And today I'm going to walk you through like I said, one of my favorite automations of all time, which I call never have a tire kicker on your calendar ever again, which if we break it down, I call like Nahat Koika. I think that was it. Yeah, Nahat Koika. That's what we call it. It's a long one, so bear with me. Anyways, first let me walk you through the scenario. So I was talking with a business owner and she was telling me like, man, I am spending all of this time taking sales calls from people who are just not qualified to buy from me. So I say, okay, great. So let's talk about that. So what do we do? Let's start with, like always, let's start with the facts. She said, well, what's happening right now is I'm taking about 12 sales calls per week. And in her model, she was selling 4 days a week, so which is about 3 calls per day. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. She said, but the problem is, of these 12 calls, 6 people were not qualified. They were unable to buy. Were not qualified. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense to me. So the first thing so these are the facts, right? Oh, make it a bit bigger. Boom. 12 calls per week, 3 calls per day. 6 of these 12 were not qualified. That means in her model, her sales calls 1 hour long. So 1 call equals 1 hour. So that means just on this, she was wasting 6 hours wasted. This is very important. It's wasted because the issue is that she was unable to close them. The issue is that they were unable to buy, period. They just weren't qualified to buy her offer. So I'm like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So now when we look at this, and this goes into the automation that is not Koika, never have a tire kicker on your calendar ever again. That's so ridiculous, but it cracks me up every time I say it. Anyways, when we think about this, the question we have to ask ourselves is, why are they not qualified? So I ask her, okay, so do you understand, or rather, do you have set parameters around who is qualified or who is not qualified? And she's like, well, I don't. So I said, okay, there are actually 2 ways to go about setting your qualification or disqualification. So route 1 is what you do is you set it based upon your best clients. And when I say best, typically I'm looking at the top 20% of clients that you have who pay on time, get great results. That's where you want to go first because you want more best clients. The better your clients are, the easier your business is, the more money you make. It's all great. Whereas on the other side, we have, instead of best clients, we go and say worst clients. Who are your worst clients? And why are they your worst clients? Because you want to filter out people who fall into the worst client category, because to this point here, if we can eliminate 6 hours of wasted time, so we're not talking to worst clients, we get that time back. But more importantly, we don't accidentally sell someone who's going to be a pain in the ass, to be quite frank. Whereas if we can eliminate this time and make sure that the calls that are qualified are only best clients, or they fit the mold of the best client, then we can make sure that we are always having the highest likelihood of selling, 1, but just as importantly, people who are going to be good to work with. Because I'm sure if you've been in business for more than like 6 months, some clients are totally worth working with, some clients are a complete pain in the ass and you wish you could just punch them in the eye and never deal with them again. And if you don't understand what I'm talking about, you obviously haven't been in business very long. So with that, back to this. So I'm going to walk through both examples, but in her model, it was easy to do it off of best clients. So I said, okay, so knowing this, tell me a bit about your best clients. Well, she said for her best clients made at least 200 grand a year. And this was important because her product was, one moment. Her product was in the 5 to 10K range. So, 5 grand against 200 grand, it's not a huge difference. Or rather, it's not a huge investment for someone who's making $200,000. If you're making, imagine you're going to buy a $5,000 product, but you only make $1,000. That's incredibly not a good idea and would be a poor choice of using your money. But if let's say even a bit higher, you make $50,000 a year. To spend $5,000 on one thing is literally 10% of your entire income. So that $5,000 would have to be spent on something really, really important. But in her business model, this was a business opportunity, like coaching, consulting type of thing. So it isn't like critical to survive, but it's nice to have. So made at least $200,000 a year. Then what she found, and for her best clients, the next one was that they lived in not California or New York. Why? Because these places, even if you're making $200,000 a year, living in California and New York are both very expensive states to live in. So even if you're making all this money, the increased cost of living for living in those two cities, or those states rather, very expensive. So she found her best clients did not live there. So I'm like, okay, cool. So let's continue on. Then she said, okay, so on top of that, she said the best clients had at least 2 full-time people. And the reason was, part of what she would implement in this is she would implement they would do some slight adjustments to how they approach managing communications with clients and their calendar in order to squeeze more out of it. And what she found is that if they did not have at least 2 full-time people, then what would happen is the person who bought the program would get sucked into the day-to-day, which would not allow them to continue growing the business. So by having 2 full-time people to manage all of the admin and client delivery communications, she was able to make sure that that they got great results from working with her. So we made these changes. By making these changes, it was very simple. We were able to go from 12 calls per week with 6 people not qualified to, I guess draw an arrow here to this side. And we were able to get her she went down to 8 calls. 8 calls per week. She was still averaging, like 3 calls per day. But in this model, only one person was not qualified. One person not qualified. Which means she only wasted 1 hour per week. So that means she essentially got back 5 hours of her time. And there's always going to be a fringe person who can sneak through and not really meet the criteria that you're looking for. That's just the nature of business. So we essentially saved her 5 hours a week of time, which for her, right? And I think this is probably the most important part that people miss, is for her. One second. Is she paid herself $500 an hour. That was her wage, okay, per hour. So if she's wasting 6 hours, that means every week she's wasting $3,000 every week. Now, if you wanted to be crazy about it, you times that by 52 weeks. That means she's wasting about $156,000 in her business every year. Wasted. Why is this green? This should be not green. This should be red. Wasted, right? By just doing this from 6 hours to 1 hour, 500, she was not only wasting $500 per week, which meant times 52 is only what's that? Half of that's 52, 26. $26,000 wasted. So obviously it's still a lot of waste, but if we're going to compare $156,000 wasted versus $26,000 wasted, which would you want to have? Well, you obviously want to waste only 26. So that's one route we can go, where you look at your best clients. Now, the other way to do that is we flip it over and we say, who are your worst clients? Who are the people that's very difficult to work with? Now, when we're looking at this, the easy ones are always things like how much money? How much money do they make and or keep and or spend or something to that effect? Money is, easily one of the easiest ways to identify whether or not someone can afford what you have going on. very lots of other common ones is what location do they live in, right? Like a very easy one is if you work in the US, or rather your business is in the US, then you're charging US based prices. If someone from, I don't know, Serbia wanted to work with you, would it make sense to talk to someone from Serbia? Serbia, as the time at the time of this video, one American dollar is equivalent to, well, let's find out. Serbia to American dollar. Wow, that's horrible. So if I look at this, 101 US dollar is the equivalent of 102 Serbian dinars. Didn't know they're called dinars. So if you're selling a product that, is $100, that means someone from Serbia is paying 10,000 Serbian dinars, which sure they might be able to, but is that likely? Probably not. So that's the easy one to factor out is location. Another one could be is if you are looking for services, or you provide services that have some kind of specific thing around it, specific, I don't know is the word I'm looking for, criteria. For example, like if you're in like taxes, is how old are taxes? Are their taxes too old? If it's too old, then we can't do anything about it because you can't help them. Things like that. But there are many ways to go about this. Never have a tag kicker on your calendar again, ever again, by simply setting it up so we are identifying who are our best clients, so we can set these as parameters, or who are our worst clients, so we can make sure that these things don't occur. Now, in terms of automating it, it's a very, very simple process. So what happens is someone lands on a page, right? They land on some page that has a form on it. What happens is they fill that form, and if they are qualified, oh, that's huge. Dang, I don't want to use that. Then they will be allowed to book a call or schedule a service. If they're disqualified, then instead, what you could do is you can route them to a different product, a cheaper product, a product that's easier, that doesn't require a sales call or something of that. You could route them to a referral partner who actually specializes in this thing. That way you can make some money off of it, even though you are not able to sell them directly. Like you could refer them to, for example, you're like a chiropractor, and your chiropractor services, you don't take insurance, for example. So therefore you charge like, I don't know, $1,000 per session, which I'm totally making up. And if you're a chiropractor charging $1,000 sessions, please contact me. I would love to work with you. But you charge $1,000 a session. If someone coming in says they only make, I don't know, 50 grand a year, then you can just route them over to a chiropractor who charges less than $1,000. Then you can just make some money off of them. Very easy. So this way, when you put this automation together, it becomes very easy to make sure only qualified people are talking to you. And on the other hand, people who are disqualified, you can send them to a different offer, or you can kick them out to a referral so that you can still make money, or maybe not even make money. Maybe just give the lead to a referral partner because they're your homie, or because you want to work with them for a bigger opportunity. All valid. So with that is, like I said, the most valuable, one of my favorite automations of all time. Never have a tire kicker on your calendar ever again. Because the simple fact is, you don't want to waste your time talking to people who can't buy. You only want to talk to people who can buy from you. And if they can't buy, you could send them out to a referral partner, make some money, or just give someone some free leads. You could route them to an offer that is cheaper and or doesn't require you to talk to them. For example, if you sell like a $4,000 HVAC service, you could route them to a DIY model that is a handbook that you created that's $97 with a list of all the products they can buy and implement themselves. I don't know, I'm making it up. And then finally, you can route them over to different situations. So that's it. So with that, I hope that this was valuable to you. If you are looking to, never have a tire kicker on your calendar ever again, love to help you with that. Link down below to schedule a call. And I think in the very near future, we're going to be rolling out like how to build automation videos. So stay on the lookout for that. That will be coming sooner rather than later. And with that, hope you have a good rest of your day. Later.